that make up our network. So we have scholars, we have activists, we have people PhD programs, we got people in seminaries, all Black women, all women of color. I think about a lot of them being in predominantly white spaces, right? And especially during this time after George Floyd, right? And everybody started buying these books and reading and saying they wanted to do better. But then you have these women, these Black women, these women of color in these spaces who are kind of now still being abused, right? In the name of racial reconciliation or some type of unity. So you do talk about this a little bit, not a little bit, a lot in your book. But can you just speak to that just a little bit? What do you, especially in this time, right, when you have these people?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book and was really interested in, because I was in these spaces where I did see and still continue to see a lot of Black women and other women of color take a whole lot of abuse. Like, it really was abuse in the name of reconciliation, right? Because they have been guilted into believing that they have to kind of somehow be these sacrifices, right? Like, I have to give up my feelings, I have to sacrifice what I want, I have to go into these spaces that mistreat me, that don't respect me, that take advantage of me, but I have to do it for the sake of the gospel, right? Like, that was, and I wanted to write in ways that empowered women. And I also saw a lot of women of color doing this work, and they had been so immersed in white religious spaces, largely evangelical, but some mainline too, that they were distanced from their own spiritual and theological ancestors, right? They didn't know, like, their theologians were white men. Like, that's who they were, that was their go-to. And so these were like women who, some had gone to seminary, some had not, but they were well read. And they wouldn't know the names of like woman and mujerista and Asian American feminists. Like, they didn't know their names, right? And for me to see that these women's entire worldview has been shaped where it's oriented to whiteness, right? It's all about serving white people, helping white people get through their racial stuff. Meanwhile, you hurting, right? You're hurting because of the things they're doing. You're not thriving, you know. And I wanted to write a book that empowered women of color who were in these spaces to claim themselves, like to say, I belong in this space. And basically, like, from Celia, until you do right by me, like, that's what it means to be reconciled. So we're not going to keep talking about reconciliation out there. And that's what we've got a lot of in these white spaces. Like, you'll have spaces where white organizations will be talking about what they're going to do, what they're going to learn about to address this moment. How are we going to respond to George Floyd? And it's like, why don't you respond by trying to treat the woman of color who's sitting right in your meeting well? Like, why don't you address the issues that she's brought up? But you want to focus on the stuff out there and make a statement and be in solidarity, but you still want to mistreat the women in your space. And so part of what I wanted to do was to raise those issues, not just for white people to say, hey, look at what y'all doing and look at the hypocrisy here, but I really wanted to raise them in a way that women of color could name, like, so that we can name, that Black women can say, yeah, what I'm doing, I'm being tokenized in a way. I'm being mammified, right? I want to be able to name what is happening in this organization and in these religious spaces, and to be able to then make decisions about to what degree do you choose to stay in those spaces, right? To what degree keep giving your all to spaces that really aren't invested in your liberation. And how do you shift how you demand your liberation, right? How do you make shifts in that? So yeah, right now we're in this position where everybody wants to be seen on the right side of the struggle, right? So everybody wants to read about the struggle. They want to wear their Black Lives Matter pin. They want to do the little things, but they actually don't want to change their relationships They don't want to change. They don't want to lose any control, right? They still want to control the form. They want to talk about how it happens. They want it to be on their ground in their territory, as opposed to saying, no, actually, we have to learn how to listen to the Black women in our space.
Mm-hmm.